What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Destination the Show. This is episode 91. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined as always by Jeremy Nygaard. Jeremy, this is like a first for us, recording at like 8:30 in the morning. How are you?
Yeah,
Are you a morning person?
yeah, I am. Probably more so than producer Theo, but Theo's awake, and maybe this is what we need to
Hey, I
do.
showed up. I got my coffee going, and I'm not in a grumpy mood. So hey, let's get this rolling.
There
There
we
we
go.
go. There we go. Yeah, I've been up for a handful of hours already, so I typically get up early and stay up too late and don't sleep much. So that
There
works
you
great.
go.
How about you? How are you doing? You got gymnastics today or something?
Nope, I don't. I have a long story I will tell you offline about a very interesting kid health situation in the past week that was a little bit scary, but we are on the mend. So my gymnastics kiddo is home with me, and we are away from practice for the week. Um, that sounded very cryptic and
Yeah,
mysterious. We're all good here. Um, Okay, let's jump in, dude. Because we're recording at a weird time and we're on a little bit limited time. So quickly, housekeeping stuff. We've had a little bit longer between episodes, but just want to throw out a message of appreciation for people who have taken time to support the show. We've done really, really well in the past 4 to 6 weeks here, from the draft all the way through the trade deadline and beyond. And so ways that you can support the show, you can like and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform of choice. You find all of our stuff on YouTube. The handle there is at Destination the Show. If you want to send us questions, you can do so on Twitter. The handle there is at DTS_pod1. Blue Sky, the handle is at Destination the Show, or you can send us an email, destinationtheshow@gmail.com. Now, we'll name the elephant in the room here real quick, Jeremy. There is news of a non-sale for the Twins, and we are not really going to dig into that today. That has been so well and thoughtfully covered by others that we figured we'd give a little bit of time and space, wait for more details of like who the new limited partners are going to be. But do you have like a one sentence reaction before we kind of move on and go about our regular business?
it was the least shocking surprise in Polad history.
There you go. There you have it. So instead, what we're going to do, because we feel like it is our role to bring positivity to Twins fandom, and there really hasn't been a lot since the trade deadline, we figured we would instead dig into some guys, a couple at each level, who are doing really well, who have risen, who have notable performances. Some are going to be really, really obvious. Others are going to be less so. And by no means is this a comprehensive list. But after the mess of the draft and the trade deadline, we really haven't had a chance to talk much about the Twins system in recent weeks. And so we'll start at the major league level, and we'll work our way on down through the lower levels of the minors and just highlight some guys who are doing some great things. So why don't we start in the majors? There's two obvious guys to talk through here, Jeremy, that fall under our kind of peer review over the couple of years we've been doing the show now. We'll start with Luke Keeschel. Currently hitting .328, 400, 534, rocking a 162 WRC plus, couple of home runs, 6 steals, striking out just 12% of the time. Do you think we should pump the brakes on Keeschel? Is the excitement getting out of hand? How do we kind of square all of that away? Because I mean, surely he's due for some regression here at some point, but he is also undeniably one of the like fun reasons to watch not that fun team right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair because if there's not regression, he's going to be the greatest baseball player of all time.
Mike Trout 2.0.
And so, and even this, what's Friday today?
Yep.
He hasn't been great this week.
Mm-hmm.
He was player of the week last week and has really come back down to earth. But I mean, you still have to figure him as the part of this next core. And there's not, aside from Buxton, who's what now 31, or I mean, getting towards the second half of his career for sure.
Yep.
Aside from that, you can really only plug him in. I think Lewis will get all the opportunities in the world, but when a guy
and Wallner.
and Wallner, and when a guy comes up like Keishel and performs the way that he's performed, you got to plug him in. I think the only mystery is like, what's his long term home? Can he be left? Can he play left field? I think there's value there, and being a right-handed outfield bat potentially. But yeah, he's been super fun to watch, and obviously recovered from an elbow thing that made him miss the latter half of last year, but he's been really good, and I think just kind of his energy when you hear him talk after games, like he just loves playing baseball.
Yep.
And it's kind of funny because you listen to him and it's like, man, this kid's real young. But yeah, it's been a heck of a time, and I think sometimes when you have guys that energetic, it's kind of contagious, and people like in with them, and Jersey's always dirty. He's a classic Ron Gardenhire type.
Yep.
But yeah, it's been fun to have something entertaining post deadline.
For sure. And I think the thing with Keishel, like, and this is going to sound like me being a Debbie Downer, but I would remind folks that I am like the
Founder.
like always been high on Keishel. Let's put it that way. But I do think like maybe, of course, his performance has been incredible. I also think it looks even more stark in a lineup where, to put your point a little bit differently, the Twins probably have like 2.5 good hitters aside from Keishel, right? You've got Buxton for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You've got, I would say, Wallner for sure. He's rocking an OPS over 800. And then you maybe have Royce Lewis.
We don't feel good about Ryan Jeffers?
I feel fine about Ryan Jeffers. I feel fine about Cody Clemens. But I guess what I'm saying is when you have a lineup that's been this depressing for this long, someone coming along and doing what Keishel's done stands out even more. And so I guess my one kind of remaining question for you, for us to kind of prognosticate on for fun, is where does Keishel settle in terms of like his performance? And a comp that we came up with for Keishel previously, just in terms of production, not in terms of like this is who he plays like, although I think there are some similarities, is Jorge Polanco, right? Who, if you look down his career line, I'm just looking at WAR, right? 1.9, 1.4, 3.3, 4, 1.7, 1.4. You're maybe looking at a guy who's a 1.5 to 2.5 win player with an occasional outstanding season. How does that like resonate with you in terms of a potential outcome for Keishel? And like, if I offered you that today, would you take it for the next 8 seasons?
Yeah, I think you absolutely take it, because the long and the short of it is that for quite some time, Polanco was kind of a spark plug in that lineup.
Yeah.
All-star, right? I think defensively value maybe similar-ish. I don't know. I mean, Polanco had some years where what was his career high in home runs?
31 and 98 RBI, and that was 2021 when things were just not going well.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was a 20-plus home run guy, right? You kind of count on that.
Well, he had 20-plus home runs for 2 seasons, and all the rest, mostly teens. 16, 14, 16, 18, 33 was a high, 22, and another 13.
So maybe
I got off by 2 there.
So maybe Keishel will have similar production. I would think, based on that first week, and we haven't seen it as much. Keishel probably adds a little more in the run game.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think that's probably because you love comp. So I'll give in on this and say that's a fair one and a good one, and definitely one that if that's the median outcome, I think that's totally fair. The hope might be that he's more than that.
Yep, 100%. But we'll take that as a floor. Another guy, Jeremy, I wanted to touch base on at the major league level, who I think is making strong progress, Zebby Matthews. So let me just rattle through some numbers here real quick. 9 starts so far this year. Has currently accrued 1.1 FWAR. So if he pitched a full season at his current pace, he's on pace for about 3.5 WAR. 16 starters eclipsed that in 2024. And I think it's worth calling that out because there's a massive discrepancy between his ERA and his FIP and his xFIP. His ERA is 5.11 at the moment. His xFIP's 2.95. He has a 30% strikeout rate. If he was qualified, that would rank 5th in baseball behind Zach Wheeler, Tariq Skubal, Garrett Crochet, and Dylan Cease. And he has a 5.8% walk rate, which would be 12th in baseball, right behind Jacob deGrom. Now, I'm not saying, for the record, that Zebby Matthews is going to be a superstar, but do we think maybe the progress he's made has flown a little bit under the radar because his back of the baseball card numbers aren't that exciting? And do we think he's maybe taking a leap to someone who can be your kind of number 3 guy behind Pablo and Joe Ryan, assuming those guys aren't traded? And I'm leaving Bailey Ober to the side just for now because his performance has been so up and down. What do you make of Matthews' progress?
Yeah, I think, based on what we've seen, you could dream on him still being a front end type. Joe Ryan spent some time as like the back end and then the mid rotation, and just that trajectory was always kind of promising. And I think that's kind of what Matthews is on. And if he develops into, and like we talk about a lot about being a playoff caliber starter, right?
Yep.
So a guy that you can give a ball to, you're going to have 3 starters in the playoffs if the Twins ever make it back there, or if they're just going to be the Pirates. But I think it's fair to say that he could certainly slot in as a number 3. He'd be the best number 4 in baseball if that's where he was long term. But I think it would be unfair to cap him at that and not say that he could be, a co-ace eventually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Struck out 9 in his last game. He's not walking anybody. The home runs in Yankee Stadium happen. But I think it's totally fair to say that his ceiling is high, and I mean, he's going to be relatively cheap for the next handful of years too. So he's going to fit in exactly to what the Twins are trying to do.
Did you watch the Yankee start by any chance?
Most of it, yeah.
Yeah. I think I tweeted something out in the middle of that, just around like being more convinced that he's going to be that guy, even after he had given up 3 solo home runs in like 3 innings. I think he had 18 whiffs in that game. Mm-hmm. And like, as you pointed out, the clear area of not weakness, opportunity, right, is you cannot leave anything. You cannot leak pitches out over the plate like he does. Like if you throw a 98 mile per hour fastball to Aaron Judge or Giancarlo Stanton right down the pipe, they're gonna swat it 150 feet in Yankee Stadium for a home run, or however far that fence is. But I don't know, man. I really feel like he kind of has the ingredients if he can tighten up especially like the fastball command just a little bit more.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
Okay, let's talk about some guys who are excelling in AAA. We're not going to dig so much in today to some of the new guys at AAA. I want to give them a little time to kind of bed in, but I do think it's time to have a conversation about someone we really just have not talked about enough this year, because he's an interesting organizational fit too. So Kyler Fedko, 25-year-old right-handed hitting outfielder, drafted in the 12th round of 2021. And just to give some numbers here before we get your take, Jeremy, on what you think of this guy. In 2024, he basically played an entire season at AA and put together an 85 WRC plus with 3 home runs. In 2025, he's hitting 269, 386, 521 with 23 home runs across AA and AAA. A WRC plus close to 150. He's already stolen 31 bases and at an 85% clip. He's walking 15% of the time, striking out 21%, which is just fine, and like around a level average contact rate of 76%. What I put in the rundown here was like in caps WTF. Like, how do you account for this kind of jump? Like, what do you like? This is an incredible season, and really no one's talking about it, even kind of locally, let alone nationally. But what do you make of Fedko's season? And like, do you think he's kind of put himself in the realm of like he has a chance to be a major league contributor at some point, particularly given that he's a versatile right-handed hitter?
I think you at least have to give him an opportunity if he keeps performing like this. And so he'll be 40-man eligible. The Twins will have a number of spots. There's not a lot of right-handed corner outfielders, so he's kind of, it's like him and McCusker, right?
Mhm.
But to see this coming, or to even hope that this was there, is crazy. Like, and you wonder when it's going to turn midnight and he turns back into a pumpkin. And that's the thing, right? You can find a long list of guys that have had breakout years, and then that's it.
Yep.
And so that typically doesn't happen, though, like where you're really organizational filler until you hit Double A, and then all of a sudden you become a prospect. And so that's where it's like he's just a super unique prospect, and I think he's obviously going to get an opportunity, because there's questions about how this outfield looks next year, and if he can be the type that at least you add to the 40-man to see, hey, is this for real? If you don't add him, I think there's another team that might say, well, we'll obviously give it a chance and see if it's real. I don't know enough to know if there was, like, I'm assuming swing adjustments, approach adjustments, like
I'll say.
where sometimes good coaching just meets up with a player that's willing to listen, and then you have this happen. But it's a super fun story that, like you said, it has really flown under the radar. And now he's at Double A, or Triple A. He's one promotion away, and like, honestly, he's probably ahead of McCusker.
100%. I think he's miles ahead of McCusker, and this is kind of what I wanted to follow up on and say, like, I don't even think he needs to hit this well to have a role, because now I got to go back and check my scouting reports from when Fedco was drafted, but he was drafted as a speed and defense outfielder, like a guy who could potentially stick in center field. And I think maybe he's not quite that guy defensively, but he's certainly a guy who, like, maybe let's comp him to like Rodin, where he definitely has more speed than Rodin. It's more like Kiersey type speed. But you could probably move him around the outfield and just spell guys and give them a day off and give him 3 games a week and say, hey, if you hit 220, pop an occasional home run, almost like that kind of Michael A. Taylor production from that really good season he had where he hit 20 bombs, but he didn't really hit that much. I think that puts him light years ahead of McCusker, because McCusker has to hit bombs for him to have value to the major league team. And the whole post deadline narrative around the Twins has been they want to get more athletic. They want to lean into like speed, defense, athleticism. Kyler Fedco checks a lot of those boxes a lot more than any other right-handed option that they have, in my opinion.
So from your perspective, I mean, I think Kiersey's spot in the 40-man is in jeopardy just because you outright him and clear waivers. Does he put both? Like, could you just take McCusker off, take Kiersey off, have Fedco, and you're the same or better off with an extra spot?
I think so. If with the caveat that, like, he has to continue to hit decently well at AAA, but he's made the adjustment well. Like, if you look at Fedco's numbers since he moved to AAA, they're really good. He's still crushing home runs. I think that you're seeing in kind of those comparisons, or the comparison with McCusker especially, kind of the divide between what the Twins have done and what they maybe want to do. And maybe Kiersey will stick around as kind of an org soldier, but he won't be on the 40-man next year. If Fedco continues to mash, I would absolutely give him a look. I think he's more than earned it. And like you said, like, this kind of development is kind of unprecedented at like 25, just randomly. And he did hit a little bit at the lower levels, but certainly the power and the slug has like really come on this year. It's been super impressive. Okay, let's talk about Peyton Eales real quick, Jeremy. Missed a ton of time at the beginning of the season, but here's my question to you real quick. Like, is he one of the guys who's likely benefited from some of the fire sale here? He has not hit the heights of last year yet, but he's been hot recently. Overall hitting 278, 379, and that's the number I'm interested in, that on-base percentage. 356, much less slug than last year, 3 home runs, 9 extra base hits overall. Walking 9% of the time, striking out just 16%. It's close to a 90% in-zone contact rate. If he continues to be hot down the stretch, is Eels someone you're interested in seeing as possibly that like infield utility Castro type role for 2026? What do you make of him?
Yeah, I think, I mean, to start, when you asked if he's one that benefited from the fire sale, I'd be hard pressed to find someone
Yeah, sure, fair enough.
Aside from, I think, Trevor Larnach, right? Where there's all these guys brought in to essentially do the exact same thing that Trevor, like,
Yep.
Alan Roden, James Outman, obviously, probably going to play more center, but it's like, Larnach is probably hurt by it. Kiersey's probably hurt by it. Aside from that, I think, there's less of a blockage for Walker Jenkins, Kalen Culpepper. Like, even though all these positions weren't traded, I think it does open up that opportunity. As far as Eels goes, it's just crazy because, we talked about how Fedco's development was kind of unseen. Like, who sees Peyton Eels do what he did last year and be this feel-good story, and probably does have that opportunity. Like, I'm an Austin Martin fan, and I kind of view Austin Martin in that Willie Castro role, but Martin plays like zero infield, right? And doesn't really have any of the profile to play a corner spot, and looks like an absolute butcher in center. So, I mean,
that's why I like Eels. That's why I like Eels better personally, because in Martin at the moment, I think at least, and I guess like maybe there's still time for proof points otherwise. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And that's totally fair. But I mean, that could be another thing where you look at and you say, like we talked about the Fedco, McCusker, Kiersey, like, is this a thing where you can say, well, Austin Martin, Peyton Eels, like this is why, and we talked about it before, like with the trade deadline, like it adds some intrigue to how rosters constructed. And when your team is kind of set, it's the fringe of the 40 man where you're like, okay, well, they're going to add this relief pitcher, but really everything else is set. So that it's added kind of excitement. And I think a lot of doors have opened for prospects that maybe wouldn't have that opportunity and have that or have that opportunity as quickly.
Yep. And like, I don't know. I guess maybe you're a bigger Austin Martin fan than I am. I just see like the things that he is purported to be good at not being that good at those. So like, yeah, hypothetically, Austin Martin should be a really good outfield defender, but he gets really bad jumps. Or hypothetically, Austin Martin should be a really good base runner, but he gets thrown out on a poor base running decision in that series against the Yankees, I want to say it was, or one of the recent games in extras. So I don't know. I do think Eels has some kind of intrigue, at least as someone who, like, I'd feel solid about Peyton Eels playing some defense at second base. Maybe not shortstop, but I don't think anyone feels confident about Austin Martin playing anywhere on the infield. And I think the Twins are going to want some type of utility guy who can do that next year, whether that's him or someone else. Okay, let's get to the famous guys, Jeremy. Let's talk Double-A quick. I want to start with Walker Jenkins. Walker Jenkins is, I guess the question I want to ask you is, like, is he just like flying under the radar now? Is he, he's just like quietly playing really well. So pulled these numbers before last night's game: 306, 410, 482. He's hit 6 home runs, 17 extra base hits in 45 games, hitting about 50% above average for the level. He's walking 15% of the time, striking out 18% of the time. He's 20. He is going to debut in the majors at age 21, barring injury. And yet, all I see, I shouldn't have said that. All I see online is just like, oh, I feel like Walker Jenkins has been a little bit disappointing as a number 5 overall pick. Like, what is your take on that? Like, this is a good season, right? Question mark. I guess that's my question to you. Like, he's doing really well, and I don't see a lot of enthusiasm for the type of production that he's putting up.
Yeah, and I think that's because he came into the year off of a shortened season as a top 10 prospect, right? And started the season injured. And now, as these midseason rankings are coming out, he's in the lower teens.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone that's not like following on a nightly basis, he's not the shiniest prospect. He's fallen in rankings. Luke Keishel's come up and done his thing. Kalen Culpepper is still pretty shiny, and he's outperforming Walker Jenkins. And I think just the vibe around the whole franchise is of disappointment, right? So
Sure.
when the sky is falling, right, the things that are supposed to make it better, is this potential top prospect in all of baseball who's now getting passed up by other people around the league, like Max Clark, right? I think Max
Mhm.
Clark is even rated above him. And Max Clark was like, "Oh, we'd much rather have Walker Jenkins than Max Clark."
Yep.
And now that's a real thing. So I don't necessarily think that it's got to do with his lack of production. It's okay, so we waited around for Byron Buxton forever, and then he's been hurt now all the time. And here's Walker Jenkins, and now he's hurt all the time. And it's trying to see all the good things through the stuff that it's like we've lived through all of that before. Royce Lewis was hurt all the time, and now it's another one of your future best players that can't stay healthy. So I think, barring injury, great. But if you said that about Byron Buxton or Royce Lewis, he got injured shortly after that. And so I think it's all kind of one and the same. But yeah, I mean, his numbers are great. He's I think by far the youngest on that roster. Would be the second youngest player. I think I looked, would be the second youngest player still in Cedar Rapids.
That's wild.
And so it's going to be fun as long as once he gets up. I think the excitement will be there if he can stay on the field, and that's hopefully what the front office is banking on, is this next wave of players, because there's a lot of them. I mean, we've talked about 2 that are there and 2 that could be there shortly, and now we're talking about the 2 kind of biggest ones that are reaching the doorstep.
Last question on Jenkins. He's on a 22 home run pace over a full season. The one question that's been asked, right, is like, the power hasn't really flashed. It started to flash more recently. Is 22 home runs a disappointment over 150 game season? What's your take on that number? I feel like it's the over under of what people would consider exciting or a little disappointing, honestly.
Yeah.
If that makes
So
sense.
I mean, if he like, if 2027 is his first full season in the majors and he's able to stay healthy and he hits 22 home runs, I think you take it as a 22-year-old.
Heck yeah.
If we look back on his career and 22 is his high, that would be disappointing. Again, I'm going to say this because I've said it a number of times. Like, Max Kepler's production is going to be a kind of the bar, and it might be an easy bar to clear. It might be a fair bar. But Max Kepler was a really solid player. And I think that, the ceiling that we want is significantly higher. But Max Kepler is a player who was super solid for 6 years. And if that's what Walker Jenkins ends up, I don't even think that's disappointing. I think that's, again, kind of a lower range of the outcomes, because I think he adds more defensively, and has more speed and all those things. But 22 is probably going to be good enough when he's 22, 23 years old, but not good enough when he's 27, 28 years old.
Fair. I like it. Okay, let's talk about his teammate, probably the sharpest riser in the Twins system across industry lists this year. That's Kylie
McDaniel.
Not for Kylie McDaniel, who has him ranked 9th. That's okay. We like variation. That makes for a fun discussion. Kalen Culpepper has developed into a consensus top 100 prospect now. It was funny because I think a lot of industry outlets are kind of figuring out how to go about their like in-season updates. So some will do like a post-draft update, and I saw him bumped from a couple of lists, and then he quickly reappeared on the August edition of those lists, because I think people dug into his numbers and they're like, oh shoot, we messed up. 305, 384, 493, 18 home runs. This is across 2 levels. 10% walk rate, 17% strikeout rate, 23 for 27 in stolen bases, 147 WRC plus, playing above average to plus defense at shortstop. Did some work with hitting coach CJ Baker in Cedar Rapids to kind of modify his setup, but the approach brought his like handset down a little bit. Cut into his chase rate some, although I think the chase rate is like the one bugaboo that you can still cite, especially against spin. Pretty much par for the course, overall contact 77%. I guess my question on Culpepper is like, this is undeniably as good a first full professional season as you could ask for. It does not get any better than this. At what point does he overtake some of the other Twins guys on the list? Like, is he pop past Erod for you? Is there a conversation to have around Culpepper and Walker Jenkins being closer in prospect status than we might think? I think something I tend to do with my list is like, oh, the Twins have a top three, right? It's like Jenkins, it's Erod, and it's Keishel. And I've kind of like locked that in. And I'm not really questioning that as much as I am the guys who are 4 through 10. So do you think Casey has a argument at least to make as like the Twins' top overall prospect?
Yeah, I think there's an argument that you could make. I don't know that I would attempt to make that yet, at least for the one spot. I think certainly for the two, it's wide open. Keishel graduates. I think he's solidly number 2 right now. But then you could have Erod if you still believe, which I've never really fully.
You've fully hopped off the bandwagon there.
I wouldn't say I fully hopped on. I would say I was never really fully on. I was always kind of skeptical. And I think, the guy that we'll talk about here a little bit later could be in that argument. But I think that the reality is that if we would have hung up our draft show last year and said we could be talking about a guy a year from now that is looking like he's definitely going to stick in the hole and is a legitimate like 20-20, maybe 25-25 or 30-30 club type guy, you 100% take that. And if that's what you get out of him, unbelievable. And so I think he's moved in, like the realer conversation is with Correa gone, Brooks Lee was going to get every opportunity to stick. And he'll get those opportunities through the end of the year. I'd be surprised if he didn't. But then I think that the real conversation is when spring training rolls around, like it's Culpepper's job to take if they believe in him. And maybe that's not right away, but he could be the Twins starting shortstop in relatively short order for the future. And so he does need some more development. There's obviously the chasing sliders, but at the same time, like Torrey Hunter was allowed to figure that out in the major leagues.
Yep.
Right. And if the expectations of your team are not to win the Central, why not let Culpepper just figure it out in the major leagues? If he's defensively good enough to stick, you live with the other stuff. He's obviously at this point, I don't think he would be. He typically bats leadoff for Wichita, right?
Correct.
Jenkins bats second. I don't think you plug him in as a leadoff type guy right away. But if you can get good production and strong defense and bat him 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th, that's a huge win as he's younger and just live with the warts, and then you see what Lee becomes. So yeah, I think there's, legitimately you can argue as high as 2. I don't know that I would ever see him outside the top 5 in the system right now. But obviously there are some people that can see that.
Yeah, 100%. And, I think the one thing I would have been interested in that I think we're not maybe going to see, I guess we'll see. I was kind of hoping we'd see Culpepper at AAA before the end of the season. And maybe we do. But Wichita, unlike Fort Myers or St. Paul, are in the thick of a playoff race. And there are some orgs who don't tend to mess with their teams when they're in the thick of a playoff race, when the difference between him spending 10 games at AAA or not is fairly immaterial. So I'll be curious to see if we see Culpepper at at AAA, but I kind of sort of think we might not.
Just to chime in on that, they did keep him with Cedar Rapids for the entire first half just to secure that playoff spot.
There you
I
go.
think, since we saw Marco Raya and Corey Lewis added to the Saints roster for the last week of the season last year, there is some hope that could be the case for the last 2 weeks. Get Culpepper and Jenkins up here for some good PR and just good exposure to Minnesota to end the season. But at the same time, if you really want to value that AA playoff race, you're going to keep those guys there. So I think you just follow how that plays out, and maybe best case scenario, we do see them here on September 9th, and if we don't, they're going to be here next May at the very latest.
100%. Yeah, that's a great point, Theo. I didn't even think of that the AAA season runs a little bit longer. I mean, I think, Jeremy, we're agreed, right? Culpepper and Jenkins start 2026 at AAA. Like, that's a lock.
Yeah, at a minimum.
At a minimum. Okay, let's talk about some guys who are doing interesting things in Cedar Rapids. Got to talk about a new guy here. Eduardo Tait, 92 games across 2 levels of A-ball so far. So these are numbers from Philly system and the Twin system combined. Currently hitting 254, 314, 433, 105 WRC plus, 13 bombs, 7.7% walk rate, 19% strike rate, 78% overall contact. He's hit the ball 116 miles per hour, Jeremy. He's 18 years old. And so I guess, we haven't seen a ton of him. We have seen him erasing pretty much every base runner at Cedar Rapids so far, would-be base stealer. I'm curious for your initial impressions of Tait. Now that we have a little kind of safe distance from the Duran trade, what do you make of him as like the headliner of the return?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a top 3 or 4 catching prospect in all of baseball. Someone that's playing at a level, probably the average age is 3 to 4 years higher than what he's playing at. Super young for his level. Will be at AA next year, I would assume, even though he hasn't played a ton in or high A. And is the heir apparent. And so I think there's questions about defensive stuff, but everything we see is how he's got a cannon, and the home runs he hits are not cheap home runs. They're
massive
shots.
They are.
So I think, like I said about Culpepper, you could have him as high as 2, as low as 5, and I think with Tait, if you're a ceiling guy, he's easily 2. And if even if it's like you bank you tread on like the closer to the majors, like Erod's closer, but he's not playing. Mm-hmm. And so I would guess that when lists are written going into next year, like you'll see him 2 on a lot of lists and 3 on a lot of lists. And I think that's totally fair. So as the headliner and a pitcher that's looked okay in his limited starts for the Twins too. Like I feel like it was a good deal for the Twins. Tait will probably be in the top 30 on a lot of lists.
Yeah.
And so when you can get that for 2 years of a reliever, I think that's a really good trade. Now the one article, I don't know if Hayes wrote it or Nightingale, that the Twins preferred Tait to Aiden Miller, who's typically listed higher. It was surprising to me mostly because Aiden Miller is like the prototypical what the Twins want to draft type.
Okay, so let's dig in on that for a second, because that is interesting, and I agree. And I'll throw it out there. I've been an Aiden Miller fan since before the 2023 draft. He fell to the Phillies. He had injury the spring of that draft cycle. He was older for the cycle. The Twins do care about stuff like that. The Phillies don't care about stuff like that. His down year, Aiden Miller, in AA is like a 118 WRC plus with like 11 home runs. That's like a 21-year-old, something like that. And so I think that is interesting because you're shooting for upside and you're starting to shy away from a guy who industry-wide people have said, this is not a shortstop, this is a third baseman in Miller. And they're saying, no, we need up the middle defense. And obviously there's challenges with predicting that with the catching position, but I find that an interesting choice and potentially one that is indicative of the new direction that the Twins are trying to go, leaning into a little bit more volatility, athleticism, et cetera, and like more valuable defensive positions. Because with Taiyi, right, like the upside here is a 30 home run left-handed hitting catcher.
Mhm.
That is like, I feel like that's the rarest of prospect kinds. Like, how many of those can you name? Like, who is there?
Well,
Cal
Joe
Raleigh.
Mauer,
That's about it.
Joe
Sure,
Mauer did it one time.
sure, sure. He was pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, one more guy to touch on the Cedar Rapids here. Adrian Bajorquez. Fresh nickname from Cedar Rapids, the Bazooka, which I like quite a bit. Has recently been promoted to Cedar Rapids. He is 20 years and 5 months old. His fastball has popped. It was up to 98 miles per hour in his most recent start. That is a career high across 2 levels this year. 26% K rate, 9% walk rate. That is down from 2024, where walks were a big problem. There's still too many, but they're less. Since he moved to high A, and this is only 10 innings, so it's a small sample. 70% strikes, which is about 10% more than he was sitting at low A, and 0 walks in 10 innings. Has looked absolutely tremendous since his promotion. What do you make of this, dude? I mean, we've always talked about him as someone who's like intriguing, interesting, but he seems to maybe taking a little bit of a leap here, both in terms of kind of stuff and his ability to use that stuff more productively.
Yeah, I think he was firmly on the radar when the Twins development Twitter account started pumping him up last spring. Like, who is this guy? And I believe there was like multiple references to him. And so maybe got a little more attention earlier than deserved. But I think the organization was certainly high on him. And when I said I thought Jenkins would be the second youngest, he would have been the second youngest till Bajorquez got promoted, because I think he's a little bit younger. So, another one of those arms that is he going to be a starter? Who knows? But when you have arm talent this far from the majors, like it just kind of works as that next wave, which is awesome when you're in the real next wave is so deep. Yep. And so there's less pressure on him to move up quicker. But you can certainly move him as deserved, because he's doing everything you're asking him to. So just another arm to take note of. And I think, you're going to see him probably in the 15 to 20 range on Twins prospect lists, but a guy with the potential to move significantly higher quicker if it sticks at high A this year, and then however April, May, June look of next year, like is it a promotion to Double A, and he's a recently turned 21-year-old at Double A that's mowing guys down, that becomes a pretty good thing. And really the floor, if the walks return and he's still throwing flames, like you just turn that guy into 2 really good prospects. So I think closer type if he can't stick as a starter, and his ceiling is as a front end guy.
Yeah, I feel like one of my most intriguing storylines for the Twins farm system in 2026 is going to be how the pitching depth fills in the lower levels of the minors. Like there's other guys we'll talk about here, Charlie Soto, Dason Hill. Then you have all of the 2025 draftees, Riley Quick, James Elwang, and Matt Barr, all those guys, and seeing how they fill in behind what has become a very top-heavy system in terms of pitching. Like a lot of it is in and around AAA with Abel, Bradley, Morris, Raya, all those guys. So that is something that I think will be really fun in 2026. Last guy, Jeremy, to touch on, then a couple of random notes. We'll get out of here. Merrick Houston. We talked about this last year with Kalen Culpepper, and it's so weird to think back on that conversation now, given what Culpepper's done in his first full season. But I think the conversation we had at the time was, what do you want to see from Kalen Culpepper in low A at Fort Myers? Him not to suck, basically, was the answer. And so Merrick Houston threw about 9 games, 378, 410, 432. That's an 842 OPS, pardon me. A couple of doubles, 5% walk rate, much lower than college, 25% K rate, quite a bit higher, but a 142 WRC plus, playing excellent defense, a very ridiculous 519 batting average on balls in play. So I'm sure we'll see some volatility to those numbers, but surely exciting to see him pass the first test, I guess, at low A and just have some solid production to start his pro career.
Yep, and that's exactly what you want. You get off playing a long college season, and you get acclimated to pro ball quickly. Will he end the season here? I would guess it'll mirror kind of what Culpepper did last year.
Promote him, you mean, to Cedar
Yeah.
Rapids?
What did I say?
Yeah, that's that. I was echoing what you meant.
Oh.
I was wondering if that's what you were driving at.
Yeah, and I think that's what we would expect to see defensively. That he looks really good, and I think that's to be expected. But yeah, I mean, if you get him to Cedar Rapids and he gets his feet wet there, and then you start next year in this really to mirror Culpepper's plan, and deviate from that only when you need to. When he beats high A, you move him up. So I have no issue with how anything's going. I think there's been like four draftees that have debuted on the hitting side, and like
JP Smith is the one who's absolutely
Smith has
mashing.
been really good, and I think one of them hasn't been great, but three of them have been good to very good, and I think just one pitcher is just Stevens. So
Yep.
yeah, it's again, it's a short amount of time, and it's like just like you said, as long as they don't suck, you can go into the off season and feel good about it, and he'll put on good weight, and certainly I think add to the power. But yeah, everything you could want from a debut so far.
Yep. 100% agree. Okay, so let's finish up with some just notes about the system as a whole, because I think there are some interesting updates there. MLB Pipeline re-ranked their overall farm systems. The Twins came in at number 2 there. Baseball America did the same. I think the Twins are at number 3 on BA's farm kind of talent or depth rankings. I suppose the argument here is generally by consensus you have 5-ish top 100 prospects in Walker Jenkins, Luke Keeschel, soon to graduate, Eduardo Tait, Emmanuel Rodriguez, and Kalen Culpepper. What I want to ask you about, Jeremy, is just like either we're going to do a couple of brief updates or ask a question of some of the 100 to 150 guys, because I think you and I have normed on like Prelip, Dason Hill, Charlie Soto, and Mick Abel are the crop that's between 100 and 150 in no particular order. So here's my question about Prelip. Prelip's doing fine at AA. He, most importantly, has stayed healthy. He's logged 61 innings, 3.65 ERA, 3.25 FIP. He is giving up a lot of hits. He is getting hit a lot, and my noticing has been like he's just throwing so many strikes. He's hovering around like 69, 70% strikes often, start to start. Are you concerned that Prelip is getting hit more in AA? Like, where does that rank on your concernometer from a 0 to a 10?
0. And so I mean, I don't have any like special information here that I'm going to share with you. But if I was the Twins, I would be like, here's the deal. We're gonna throw you out here every 7 nights. We want you to feel good after you throw as, just attack the strike zone. Make your pitches, because you're on a limit, count.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if you go in there and you start throw away balls in the dirt, that's one pitch that you aren't going to get to throw to a later batter. Like, try to work as late in the games as you can, but know that you only have 70 pitches or whatever he's going to throw. And the best way to do that is to attack the strike zone. And early in the season, I guess I haven't looked later. You could probably give more information here, but like the hits that he was allowing, they weren't hard contact.
It's the same now. And
so even when he's throwing the way that he's throwing, he's not. I mean, yeah, sure, the volume of hits his whip is higher than you would necessarily want to see. But if you would have told me 5 months ago. In the middle of August, our complaint on Connor Prelip is going to be he's given up too many hits, but he's made every start.
Yeah.
Like, great. And so I want him to, like, the reality is the bullets that he has in the chamber are probably less than others, right? At any time the arm blows up, he's done. There'll be the third one. And so use what you got, throw strikes if it gets hit around, and we'll reevaluate, where we are at the end of the year. I would love to see him promoted. He's going to have to be out of the 40 man. So what's the the hold up on letting him throw some of these pitches at target field, where it's going to be like, okay, now you're going to throw 30, you're going to pitch 1 inning and go after him and use your full arsenal and see if you can get guys to chase, because his stuff is still nasty, right?
Yep.
And I'm not down on that at all. The fact that he's healthy, the fact that he is getting people to swing and miss and strike people out, that outweighs the other stuff very, very heavily.
Yep, 100% agree. And I would double down on what you said around it's a lot of soft contact. I think that is right. That is, in his last start, it was a couple of soft serve singles up the middle, and it was a catcher interference, added another base runner, and then you're adding 15 pitches to an inning and so on and so forth. I think it's too many strikes for a guy who throws 3 pitches for me, with too many of the fastballs leaked out over the zone. And so my wonderings for the offseason are they going to have him add a 4th pitch? I vote yes. And can he learn? This has been a similar deal for Zebby Matthews. You got to learn when to leave the strike zone, in what counts and how and in what ways to what hitters. And I think that takes time, but I don't have a ton of concern about that either. Moving on to a couple other pitchers a little bit further down the pipeline here, Jeremy. This is from Jeff Johnson. Tweeted this out this morning. But I've been told Cedar Rapids Colonel's pitcher Charlie Soto will not pitch the rest of the season, but should be ready to go for 2026 spring training. He made 3 starts for Cedar Rapids in April. We do not have any more details on that, but obviously that's a big bummer because he looked so good early on in the season at Cedar Rapids, obviously super young for the level. Your reaction to that news?
Yeah, I guess I'd be curious to know more about what's going on. It doesn't surprise me if when you haven't thrown for as long as he hasn't, that he would put him back in the game action with so little time left. 20 years old, it's kind of a lost season, but as a 20-year-old in his second year of pro ball, you can get that one. You can kind of get that one back.
Yep.
I would anticipate he'd start next year at Cedar Rapids again, and
agreed.
Him and Hill kind of probably compete with each other, and if they both make it up to high A at some point next year at 21, like you're on the right track. So knowing how the Twins have treated injuries with Raya and being really slow with him, and Prelip and being really slow with him, Corey Lewis taking so long to get back, like part of that is it poor rehab recovery, or is it just being extra cautious?
Yep.
And without knowing those answers, if you hear that his shoulder's shredded up, that's not great. But if it's just like soreness and you can shut him down and be more cautious, I think that's entirely fine to do, as the Twins have a number of other guys that are going to be ready soon and have a lot of pitching prospects. So I'm not overly concerned about it. It's a bummer. And I think kind of the out of sight, out of mind when you refigure your top 10s or top 15s, like Soto probably
takes
falls
a tumble.
to the bottom of that. Yeah, it falls to the bottom of that tier of pitchers just because he hasn't done anything. So
yep.
If this is a year after year thing that we see when like Erod, that would be a little more concerning.
For
sure. A young kid that throws 99, 100 miles an hour with a sore shoulder, that seems logical to me.
Yep. Okay. Speaking of other young guys who, this is kind of divergent update here in terms of good news. Dason Hill, recently promoted to Cedar Rapids, will start for the first time this weekend, I believe. 19 years old. Here's the book on his numbers at Fort Myers: 52 innings pitched, a 2.77 ERA, a 3.49 FIP, struck out over 30% of batters, walked too many, close to 15%. And I think the one ding you can say is the strike rate was hovering around 59%. However, he's a very tall dude, and it takes time to figure all of that out. But Jeremy, would you say, I mean, we talked about with kind of Kalen Culpepper, right? This is a close to an ideal first pro season. I think you could make the same argument for Dason Hill here, getting a taste of high A before the end of the season, something that notably Charlie Soto did not get in Fort Myers, and Hill, I mean, when he's on, is just like absolutely dominant for the level. What are your thoughts here?
Yep. Yeah, you take this year as a win. And if he starts this weekend and he's throwing to Tait, that's two 19-year-olds, the 19-year-old battery at high A, which is super exciting. So yeah, I would, at this point put Hill kind of in that more risky tier, but with all the other pitchers, with more of the extreme risk that we like to talk about.
Yep.
But as a lefty, like the floor is just that much higher. So just stay healthy and come back to come back and pitch in a little bit colder weather in April when you start at Cedar Rapids and go from there.
Yep. That will be one to watch this weekend. Dason Hill, I think possibly Saturday night, his first start for Cedar Rapids. So make sure to check that one out. All right, we will push pause there for today. Thank you guys for bearing with us on a little bit of a longer break between episodes from last week to this. We will keep the content coming in the coming weeks. Lots to talk about with the Twin System. We do have a couple of exciting guests coming up when we can schedule those in the next week or so. Thank you guys for checking out the show. We will catch you next time.